I resolved if Spinoza is good enough for Einstein, he's going to be good enough for me.
Einstein was asked once, do you believe in God? And his answer was...
The God of Spinoza, I wanted to know about this guy whose concept of God was good enough for Einstein. Spinoza's system of thought, it's more Eastern in that the created world is internal to the being of God. I first heard of Spinoza from Einstein, and I began as straddling physics and philosophy. I chose philosophy, but stayed up with physics and the quantum theory, and I read what the great physicists thought about what it all means, and the top of that list is Einstein. I resolved if Spinoza is good enough for Einstein, he's going to be good enough for me.
Einstein was asked once, do you believe in God? And his answer was...
The God of Spinoza,
I believe in the God of Spinoza.
And when I read that, I think I was an undergraduate. I read, I got to find out who the Spinoza guy is. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to know about this guy whose concept of God was good enough for Einstein.
Most people have heard of Spinoza. I think most people know he's right up there in the pantheon of really great philosophers. But I'm under the impression that most people don't understand Spinoza very well.
I think that's right. The major difference between Spinoza and other philosophers of that time, and including theologians, is that his concept of the relationship between God and the world is very, very different from that of the Judeo-Christian worldview, that God is wholly other and he created the world as separate from himself. In Spinoza's system of thought, it's more Eastern in that the created world is internal to the being of God. So the relationship between you and I and God is like the relationship between individual cells in our body and the body as a whole. The body creates every cell within it. Every human being or every mind is internal to the mind of God. And that's the major difference, and that's the most difficult thing for Westerners to get about him.
I gather it's generally agreed he was a rationalist. It's the school of philosophy he belonged to.
I agree with that too.
How do we define rationalism?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I would construe it that the rationalist kind of believes that conceptually you can figure it all out, that the mind can figure it all out, and deduce things from self-evident first principles. Spinoza's first self-evident first principle is there must be something that exists that's independent of anything else.
First cause.
A first cause.
Which is what Aristotle called it.
Right. Yeah. Spinoza gives it three names. Substance, nature, and God. I think substance is the one that I like best because it doesn't have the theistic connotations of God. But now if you look around, what is it that satisfies this concept of existing independently of anything else? So you look around, well, it's not my body. That I know. My parents were necessary for that. It's not these flowers. It's not, right? Not even the atoms. These are created in stars, right? So it turns out that no finite thing that you see around is a candidate for independent being.
Yeah.
But what is a candidate is reality conceived of as a whole.
In other words, Spinoza's a rationalist. He wants to justify God using rational criteria. One of those criteria is that God has to be independent, self-sustaining. And so he's asking himself, what could that be? And he comes up with everything. The wholeness, the universe is self-sustaining. Therefore, the universe is God.
And I think that's one of the things Einstein liked about it.
Now, the interesting thing, though, as a rationalist, many rationalists today are atheists, I presume. They don't buy the ontological argument that Spinoza raised.
They don't consider, well, what is this whole? What is this universe we're living in? Is it a one or is it a many? It's got to be a one because there are no boundaries.
Mm-hmm. It sounds very much like the Buddhist view of things, although Buddhists are considered atheists.
If you take that word, atheism, and look at it slowly, you'll see it is atheism, meaning negating theism, the view that by theism we mean that there's a God totally separate from the world, right, who's perfect unto himself, and that he creates the world which is wholly other than him. In the, it was around 1900 when Westerners, when Buddhism came to the United States, basically, Western theologians looked at it as an atheistic religion. Because it did not have a concept of a personal deity that you could worship as something other than yourself. Okay, it embodied this holistic view of God, that everything that happens internal to the being, to the divine being.
So Spinoza draws a lot of implications from this insight.
Yeah. Spinoza is talking about applying that understanding to your emotional reality. And he comes up with what he calls the dictates of reason. That it is reason, that is when you figure out things from first principles, reason will tell you that hatred cannot be destroyed by hatred, but only by love. And he talks about the man of reason lives in such and such a way, and it's the way an enlightened person would live, with malice towards no one, and loving kindness, a steady flow of loving kindness coming within him, radiating outwards to all things that come.
And I gather from historical accounts that it's generally agreed that this is how he, in fact, lived his life.
Pretty much.
That he was an exemplar of his own philosophy. I mean, we're taught to hate the devil, for example. We're taught to hate Hitler. We're taught to hate tyrants. But at a deeper level, we love everything. We embrace everything because of our divine nature.
And you and I have both heard stories from near-death experiencers. Where someone who played a role, a negative role in their life, in the near-death experience conditions, they realized that this was all planned. That soul, that's deep love between the two souls that manifested as adversaries in this life. Studying the near-death experience has shaped and structured and helped my understandings of both Plato and Spinoza. And in fact, when I first read Moody's book in the 70s, Raymond Moody's Life After Life, I'm reading it, and you know, I had the same academic, this is hokey stuff, you know. I was suspicious and skeptical. But when I started reading the reports that he was citing, because I had taken courses on the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, and even Western mysticism, I could see that they were the same kind of thing, that the near-death experience was saying the same thing. And with Plato and Spinoza, if you get a sense that they're both talking about the same thing, but the concepts they use are so different, that it frees you from identifying with the concepts. And you're able, or at least I was able to go just a little bit further than just because here you can describe it this way, you can describe it that way. So you're not just limited by just one description.
Your interest in Spinoza is really as a spiritual inspiration.
Something like that. When I was studying the quantum theory, I wanted to know what those great minds that conceived the theory, what did they think about what is it all about? What is the meaning of life, basically? And, of course, I found their writings very inspired because they were all open to a holistic, and even spiritual, world.
The founders of quantum physics, almost to a man, had a deep interest in mysticism.
Yeah. And that I found very, very inspiring, in my seeking. And so I identified more as a seeker than as a scholar. In some ways, I look at all the isms as maps, as guides for living. And Spinoza explicitly said that my purpose in writing is to take the reader by the hand, as it were, and lead him to the knowledge of his own divinity.